Yeah, it is another episode of the Autumn Windbags. RJ Clifford, Juan Soto. Let's have some fun today with Brian Flores alleging that the NFL and all 32 teams are practicing racist practices in their hiring scenarios. He is now suing all entities because this is way above Soto and my pay grade. We brought in the ringer. Drew Davenport is an Auction Brief podcast, auction draft expert, and also a practicing criminal defense attorney. Back on the show. How you doing, Drew?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me, guys.
Good. Well, this is, I guess, weirdly, the kind of stuff you live for, right? A practicing defense attorney, a guy that works in football. This is like right up your alley in just about every single way. We knew we had to get you back on. So just real quick, you had a really great breakdown on Twitter, breaking down all 53 pages of the lawsuit. I highly recommend everyone checks it out. We'll link it down in the description below so you guys can see it as well. Really good verbal breakdown. But when you first heard that there was a lawsuit from Brian Flores and then you read the entire lawsuit, what was your not all the details, but your biggest takeaway of what Flores is trying to do and what he thinks going on?
Honestly, my first reaction was that this is probably not something that's going to be very viable in a court case. That was my first thought.
Okay.
But then after I read it, 58 pages, this was not something that was slapped together and filed after Flores got upset about the Giants. Mm-hmm. So my biggest takeaway was that seeing it all together, listed all of the things that we have all as football fans been aware of and have seen, brought to our attention, and we'll get into some of those things in the suit, but all the things that were listed, bang, 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 in those 58 pages, it was pretty breathtaking. It was pretty staggering to see it all put together and have it be all, listed in one suit. And I started to change my tune a little bit after I saw that all put together and thought, gosh, we tend to forget some of the things that we've heard over the years. And boy, it's quite a bombshell.
Well, hit me with some of that, Drew. Hit me with some of those cliff notes, some of the high points.
Yeah, well, some of the statistics, easy for you to say. Some of the stats were pretty amazing that they had in the suit that you're aware of it. That there's some of these stats. Let me give you an example. They right out of the gate, they were talking at the beginning of the suit about the number of coaches in the league currently employed. And we all know there's only one of the 32 teams that have a black head coach right now. Mm. And then, but even more so, and one of the points that they made was that the pipeline to becoming a head coach has the same discriminatory practices / problems. And so they listed those statistics as well. Only 4 of the 32 teams have a black offensive coordinator, and that's just 12%. Only 11 of the 32 teams have a black defensive coordinator. That's 34%. 8 of 32 special teams coordinator, 3 of 32 with a quarterback coach who's black, and then 6 of 32 with a black GM. So when you see those numbers right in front of you, you think like, gosh, I knew that was there, but seeing the stark numbers and what they put after that is you have to juxtapose that against the fact that 70% of the NFL players are black. Mm-hmm. So that was one of the big things. That another statistic that they talked about, which was related to the integration of the league. So and that's what I'm talking about. This thing was comprehensive. They went all the way back to the beginnings of the league, and about how I believe in 1933 they talked about there being a quote gentleman's agreement that actually one or more owners had gone on the record and admitted existed back in the day. That there was a gentleman's agreement that they weren't going to employ black players. And that happened from 1933 to 1945 before California forced the Rams to put a black player on their team because of a Supreme Court decision. And then the amazing thing that they talked about was from 1945 on, how long did it take for actual change to happen, not just for one token black guy to be put on the team. But they talked about, so it took, at that point, from that point on, it took 20 years for the league to hire the first black official. It took 40 years for people to really think that black players could play quarterback. It took 43 to hire their first black head coach, 54 years to hire their first black general manager, and we're 76 years after integration, and there still is no black majority owner, and there's never been a black commissioner. So those are the, those statistics were just like, they hit you in the face like, wow, that's unbelievable stuff.
So is that something? So it sounds like they're putting the history of the NFL on trial. Is that a viable case? Like, is that like, because if I'm a new owner, like my defense would be like, I wasn't the owner when this happened. Like, I've been owner 10 years and I haven't done anything, any of this stuff. Like, that's in the past. Roger Goodell, that's in the past. Is that a defense that works, and is that an accusation that they can prove and have luck with?
So the short answer is no. It's not really a viable strategy to win a court case. No,
okay.
But I think that what they're trying to do is draw the link between what they used to do and what is still happening. And one of the things they pointed out was, like, for instance, one of the guys that was involved with the handshake agreement back in the day was a Mara, from the Mara family. And then they point out that the New York Giants have never had a black head coach in 100 years of their existence. So what they're doing is they're tying in the history of the league with what's going on currently, and they're hoping to show that, hey, look, nothing has really changed. We may put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig.
Yeah, because it seems like it's so hard. I mean, we're so quick in society to brand someone a racist, right? Whether they deserve it or not, right? That's not what I'm getting to. But like as Twitter or the news or as a society will brand someone as a racist, proving it in a court of law seems to be a very different thing. To say, like, these are racist practices, they are discriminating against this group of people. What do they have? Like, how do you prove that a whole entire entity has discriminatory practices?
That is a great question. And that is the first thing that I thought when I heard about the suit without having read it, was that there's just no way you're going to prove that. So there's a couple levels to this, though, that I think we have to remember. Number one is, I would say off the top, I'm not a civil rights attorney, and I'm not an expert in civil rights law. So I just want to put that out there. I have experience with it. Of course, I studied it in law school and had to be aware of it and know it. And I'm obviously more versed in it than the layman, but I'm not an expert in that area. But I will say this: what I know
You're
about,
only 37 times smarter at it than we are, as opposed to 42 times smarter at it than we are.
Yeah. So I mean, you understand. So, what when I look in, I think what it comes down to is you have to have. There's a much higher level. There's a much higher hurdle, I think, is how I would put it, to prove that these practices are all discriminatory, because there isn't going to be necessarily a smoking gun, although they say that they do have some things that may equate to a smoking gun from the Dolphins and from, of course, the texts that were included in the suit from Bill Belichick, and we can talk more about that if you want. But I think the levels that I'm referring to that I want to talk about is real simple. There is proving the case or winning the case, and then there's putting the NFL through its paces and making everyone aware of it. And so those are two different levels. I'm not sure that Flores filed the suit expecting to win. However, I'm not saying he can't, because when I thought about it initially, I said, nah, this is never going to go anywhere. After reading that suit, I wouldn't be so sure. I think this thing has legs. Having said that, I don't know that his goal when he filed it was to win. And he's made some comments about that. Like, I know that I'm torpedoing my career, but this is important for future black coaches for this suit to be filed. So his goal here isn't necessarily to win the case. It's to shed light on the problem and bring the NFL to the table in a meaningful way to settle this in a way that's going to affect change in the NFL going forward.
How damning are those Bill Belichick texts?
They're not good. They're not good. So if you haven't seen them, he included 2 screenshots, and they actually appear in the suit twice. But basically, what it comes down to, the short version is, he thought he was on his way to interview for the Giants job and had a real good shot at it, and gets a text from Bill Belichick saying, we hear you're their guy, and he thinks, well, they're talking about me, and he's ecstatic because he wanted the Giants job. And then at a certain point in the conversation, it dawns on Brian Flores that Bill Belichick meant to text Brian Dable. So he says, are you sure that you're talking to the right guy? And then Belichick says, oh, sorry, I effed that up. My bad. And then, I can't imagine that feeling. I don't think any one of us could imagine that feeling of just the humiliation of being like, I really wanted this, like something that you had your hopes set on, that you were excited about, you're preparing for, and then you suddenly know, nah, they're not even thinking about you. They're thinking about this guy they already hired. They already want.
Flores is a New York guy, right? He's from the area.
Who?
Flores. He's a New York guy, right? He grew up in the area, right?
I think so, although I wouldn't be confident in my answer.
Yeah, I think he is.
Because my thing with that text was like, it looks really damning in the court of public opinion, but I'm wondering, again, legally, which is very, very different than like swaying the public, but legally, is that a smoking gun? Because Belichick can just simply say like, yeah, I heard that the other Brian is just in the running, or he's the leader in the clubhouse, but it's still open and they're still interviewing people, right? Like it's not like Belichick was the
That's not what he
maker.
said, RJ. He said, I heard from the Bills and from the Giants that you're the guy. Bill Belichick, you're on the stand now because you're a part of this. Where did you hear that from? Okay, now that person that you named, where did you hear that from? And where did you make this? And where did you make this decision? And now, why did you make this decision before you interviewed this guy? So that's where the whole thing starts rolling.
Well, no, because again, you put Belichick on the stand and he says, "What you said? You're the guy. What did you mean by that?" Oh, I heard that he was the leader in the clubhouse. He could say that instead and say, "I didn't know for sure. They didn't make a decision. I just heard that this is the leader." He could always say that in the court. That's my point. Is like you put him on the stand and he can have a defense. Like he's not the decision maker, and he could say, "Well, I meant this." You know what I'm saying? Like you can.
I think you're both right. It feels like fence sitting, but I think you're both right because, Bill's going to find a way to wriggle out of it. Like there's too much time now that they've made, and that's the gamble that you make when you file that and you put it in the filing, is that you're going to give Belichick and the people who know that they leaked it to Belichick, they're all going to get time to get their story straight and wriggle out of it. But also,
like we know, the public knows what happened there, but in a court of law, like you said, with the defense,
they're going to throw all sorts of obfuscation on it and just sort of like try to muddy it up and say, he didn't know. And you're absolutely right. They're going to put Belichick up there as far as for discovery purposes. They're going to depose him, and then they're going to try to get the names of the people who were talking to him. And so I think his point is relevant because that's part of what the point of the suit is to dig into all the levels of people that knew stuff or said stuff, and they're going to try to go after that in the discovery process.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like again, you're the attorney here, but it sounds like what you're trying to say is like maybe you're not trying to like win a case black and white, but if you can get all 32 owners worried that they're going to be put on the stand, put Bill Belichick on the stand, put secretaries and drivers and executives, and get everybody involved in this, you're going to start getting pressure with like, all right, whatever he wants to change, let's just do it, because no one wants to be dragged. It's one thing for, your company to get sued, but when it's like, I'm going to be put on the stand now, like I can be in trouble. A lot of those voices are going to say like, all right, just give him whatever he wants and let's get this thing over with.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about the pressure that he wants to bring. And he laid out some things in the suit that he wants from the NFL and from the result of the suit. And I would venture to say that after, this all dies down and it starts going through the process, people forget about it for a while. And that's what the NFL wants. They want it to die down, and then they're going to come to the table with Flores and say, how can we make this go away with you feeling happy? So I don't think this case ever actually gets, to a courtroom. I could be wrong. Again, I'm not an expert, but I think that with the things he's laid out specifically in the suit that he wants, I don't think they're that crazy his demands aren't crazy. I think it's possible he gets what he wants.
Mhm.
What are the specific demands that he has, and how does the suit legally make that happen?
Well, he asks for what they call injunctive relief, and that is, I'm going to consult my notes here because there's what they call the prayer section of the suit, and that's just what you're asking for. So he's asking for a declaratory judgment from the court, first of all, that the defendants violated these laws that they set out in the suit, and those are a couple New York state and city laws against discrimination, one New Jersey law against discrimination, but the big one is the federal 1981. That's what we call the section, the 1981 section on discrimination. So they want the court to declare that these things have violated laws against discrimination, number one. Number two is the injunctive relief, and basically that's a broad ask about forcing the league to do some things, and a couple of those things that he details right at the beginning of the suit. He talks about setting up a fund where they can ensure diversity of ownership by creating and funding a committee dedicated to sourcing Black investors to take majority ownership. And the other thing that I thought that was really good was creating and funding a training program for lower level Black coaches who demonstrate an aptitude for coaching or an interest in advancing. Because one of their main arguments is it isn't just like, hey, they don't interview enough people for head coaching. That's just scratching the surface. That's their argument. What they're saying is that the pipeline, and they made a very persuasive argument in the pleading that the majority of head coaches, I believe it's 80%, around 80% of head coaches are coordinators previously. And then, so the fact that there's fewer Black coordinators means there's going to be fewer opportunities to go for the top spot. So the whole pipeline, even quarterback coaches, and they make the persuasive argument that being a quarterback coach is a big deal into getting into being a coordinator. And Ken Dorsey will tell you that. He just got hired as a coordinator after being the Bills QB coach.
Sure.
So they're talking about funding this program that's going to help Black coaches at every level of the pipeline advance, so there's more of a pool to draw from for the head coaching spots.
And that doesn't seem like outrageous demands at all.
Nope.
Like he's not coming out and saying like half of all NFL head coaches have to be Black, or like a third of all the owners have to sell to Black owners. Like this is not a lot, right? Like this seems like, and it's different because before, like the Rooney Rule was the big one that the NFL tried to put in there to try to like help Black coaches, but it's so toothless. Like you can just like, hey, I texted this guy and wanted to ask him, to interview, and that counts. Like it's just like it's such a toothless. And then you get this super shitty, awkward situation where these Black coaches know they're not up for it, but they're just meeting the quota for the interview, and it's just like it was just a poorly executed rule. But Brian Flores doesn't sound like he's asking for a lot, but even then, which is like these committees to help coaches and potential owners and stuff like that go through, is there anything concrete? Like, is there a tangible result that he's demanding, or is it just simply these committees to kind of help the process?
Yeah. Those are the most concrete, but also, of course, he's asking for monetary damages as well.
Of course.
So that was the third part of the prayer, was monetary damages for actual loss, but also for loss of reputation, opportunity, and mental anguish are the three things that they note in there. So I think that you're absolutely right. They're not his demands or his asks here are not crazy. So if they refuse to do that stuff, I don't know. It's going to take a while. This thing's going to take a long time. It's going to be drawn out, but I don't think his demands are crazy. And those, I think those are the most concrete asks. They want the court to declare that it's been a violation of law. That's a big win for them, for the court to say, hey, you actually did this, and this is a problem. And then beyond that, the concrete ones are, funding, sourcing these committees, helping Black coaches at the lower levels, and then, of course, monetary damages.
So something that I thought of the other day when we were recording, this whole with the owner Ross from Miami, from the Dolphins, the whole incentive to lose. if they pry into that and they look into that, how damaging could that be if they like maybe look into like some of their maybe email communication, text communication? What can they find if they kind of look at something and find like, hey, well, let's get rid of him because he didn't want to play ball with us? How damaging could that be?
Raiders fans know what can happen when you
Extra.
dive into emails.
You do.
Very aware.
You do. And you know, you joke, but you're right, because the very emails that brought Gruden down were mentioned in the suit as well. And one, so to your question, I really think that not only is Ross in trouble here as far as maybe they make him sell the team, that kind of, it could cross into criminal as well. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they're going to go to criminal. I would doubt that they're going to go that far, but I wouldn't be shocked if the NFL says that when some of these things come out, that hey, you got to sell the team, you're done here. And the Flores camp claims that they have actual text messages verifying what Flores is saying from the GM at the time. So that is, well, that's massive if he's got that stuff. And on top of that, I don't know if you guys heard that Hugh Jackson has come out and
I
said,
thought I was going to ask you about that too. Follow up.
yeah. So Hugh Jackson, and I don't know who this woman is. I didn't spend a lot of time researching her, but I know that when she commented and said, hey, she put on Twitter publicly, hey, we've got receipts that Hugh Jackson was paid, or they were trying to pay Hugh to lose as well. He commented underneath it and said, you know, this is all true, and I have proof.
Yeah,
So
I guess he was paid a total of around, I guess it was around 750K, different incentives that didn't amount. It wasn't directly to lose, but things that would amount to him losing, like making
yeah.
sure you had the youngest team in the NFL, or that you did certain things to just the things that would lead up to you losing games.
Yeah, and I think again, if there's proof there, holy cow, this is going to get wild.
Yeah.
And I've had a couple people ask me, and they said, "Well, I mean, you know, how is this racially motivated?" And I said, "Well, I don't
You bring in
necessarily
the black
know."
coach to lose,
Right.
before you can hire the white coach.
Right. Yeah. So I said that. I said, on its face, the action itself is not racial, but if this is only black coaches being asked to do this, there's the link, and it's not a tenuous link. It's right there in front of you.
So multiple like specific teams are brought up in this. The Raiders are all over this. Like multiple pages of this were dedicated to the Raiders. Like you mentioned, the Jon Gruden emails and that, you know, that stuff. How much are the Raiders, whether Mark Davis or the organization or whoever, specifically in different hot water than the other teams? And what is the Raiders' connection to this lawsuit?
I wouldn't say the Raiders are at the top of the list. No, I don't. So the main arguments that I saw were specifically the Gruden stuff, but it all kind of tied together with the firing of Reggie McKenzie and how successful he was. So the arguments that they made were that during McKenzie's tenure, they were not only successful, but had the highest percentage of black players on their team. And then subsequent to him, I believe it was 2 years after he was the executive of the year in the NFL, he was fired. And subsequently, the percentage of black players dropped by 15%. I believe it was somewhere in the low 80s to high 60s. So it was like 82 to 67. So what they're saying is, so they've got a black GM who is executive of the year, has a successful team. I believe it was 12-4. And then just 2 years later, they fire him. They bring in a white GM, a white coach who's now been proven to be on the record to be racist and say racist things. And, you know, I think that I don't think they're not in trouble, but I don't think it's high on the list of things. Because I would say that the link there might be the most tenuous link as far as, you know, the percentage of black players and things like that. When it comes down to proving something like that, I'm not denying the thought process or the links they've drawn. I don't mistake me here. I think the links are in my mind, again, they're right in front of you. However, proving something like that, like, no, this talent, that talent, we had to bring in this guy for this reason and this guy for this reason. And, I think there's a million things that they can point at for those motivations. The thing you can't get out of is, I don't know if there's more things that are going to come out that Jon Gruden said, or things in some emails that are going to shed further light on it. I don't know. But I wouldn't say that the Raiders are high on the hit list necessarily.
Okay. So not to put you too much on the spot, but you said like this is probably going to go on for a long time. Other things can come out of this. There's evidence that's still being put out there. What's the defense going to be, et cetera, et cetera. But with the information that we have now, Drew, bust out the crystal ball. What do you think happens? What's the timeline? How do you think this all folds out with just the information you have today, February 3rd?
So yeah, that's tough. You understand that's a tough question, but the best thing I can say is this: I don't think this is going to. I think this is going to go at least a year or two, and federal cases are notoriously slower, and I wouldn't be shocked if we're here in a couple of years. On top of that, I would say that as far as how it's all going to resolve, this is, and I've been saying this on the Deshaun Watson case for a while, and I feel like I'm going to be woefully wrong at some point. It's going to just happen, but they don't want this to go to court. It's not going to end up in a courtroom. The Flores camp, their main thrust is going to be discovery, and they're just going to try to throw the subpoenas at everything they possibly can. Get these Washington emails and all that stuff. They're going to try to get it all, and it's one of those things where it's kind of, I make the analogy like if I'm in a trial and I know that I can't ask the witness a question or whatever, and I'm in front of the jury, but I know there's something really important, I'm going to ask the question anyway. And the judge is just going to say, no, but the jury already heard it. So that's the same thing that we're going to do here, or excuse me, they're going to do here. Forrest is going to do. He's going to throw everything at the wall, every discovery request he can, try to depose every single person that he can, and the judge will have to decide whether it's relevant or not. But there's going to be a lot of information that comes out of here, and I would guess that before the NFL allows that to happen, they're going to come to the table and say, "What do you want?" and how can we make you happy? So I would guess that that's coming down the road, but it's going to be a while.
His name's Drew Davenport. Make sure you give him a follow on Twitter at Drew FBG Auctions. Practicing criminal attorney, also great for fantasy football, and the smartest guy to ever come on the Autumn Windbags. Thanks for coming on, Drew. We appreciate it.
By far.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate that. Thanks for having me.